Hi, I'm Dave from Cloverleaf Racing. Today I'd like to talk about some tools that every racer should probably carry in their toolbox. So people ask me what type of tools they should carry in their toolbox. Well, the first thing I recommend is a Phillips screwdriver. Now I've got a variety of sizes here. This is a 1. This is a 00. And then the most common would be the 0 size. I find it's handy though to have the other two for the bigger or smaller screws that we might run into. And I also like to carry a flat blade screwdriver. I find this really handy, not only for screws, but for prying motors out, prying pieces of plastic apart. The last things that they should carry are hex drivers. Now there's two different sizes. There's a 1.3, and this is for the NSR set screws. And then we have the 0.9 millimeter hex driver, and this is for the slotted screws. There's a different type of hex driver. It's a 0.9 millimeter hex driver. And this one happens to be a torque wrench. That means as this tightens, it gets to a certain point and it won't go beyond being tightened beyond that point. I can demonstrate it by holding it. If I were to hold this end of it, you can see that the handle rotates and it clicks. That means that it's reached a certain point where it will no longer turn the screw. And what that does, hopefully, is prevent the tip from being stripped out, from being rounded off. Now, eventually that's going to happen whether you use a torque or a fixed driver. So what's handy about this one is the tip can be replaced. I don't have to replace the handle, I can just get another tip. On this tool, when the tip becomes rounded, I'm going to have to replace the whole tool. Now, it's an inexpensive tool, but I'd rather replace the tip as opposed to replacing the whole tool. What's nice about these tools is that they can fit inside this holder, and what's convenient about that is I can tell if I've got all my tools at the end of a night. People will come up and borrow my tools, and if something's missing, I got a pretty good idea which one it is. So I like using this holder, and I find it very convenient for that reason. Now, some of the other things I like to carry is what I call consumables. There are those things that I'm going to run out of. You know, you have for a while and then you use them up. One of those things is grease. This is a thicker type of lubricant, and it's great for putting between the gears, the pinion gear and the spur gear. Another type of lubricant would be super lube, really good for axles and bushings. It's a lighter oil than the grease, just someplace where you need, obviously, a little bit lighter lubricant than you would a heavy lubricant. The other type of liquid that I go through would be a type of braid conditioner. I use this on the braids for the cars. It helps with the connectivity between the track and the motor of the car. Gives me good electrical connection. And then I have an assortment of adhesives. Shoe goo or goop is really good for, it's a thick type of adhesive that sets up rather quickly. It takes about 24 hours to really completely dry, but it sets up pretty quickly. And it's really good for like putting windshields in, headlight buckets, someplace where you can kind of smear it around. It's not terribly sticky, so you can get it off your fingers. It also gives you time to put something into place before it sets up. Super glue, crazy glue, is something that we all use, putting bumpers back on our cars, putting the wings back on our cars. This sets up really quickly. I carry a couple of different types. I have a very thin type of glue. It's really good for weeping into the cracks and crevices of two pieces that fit together. Or I have a little bit thicker one, and this one, the applicator on this one, instead of being poured, is actually a brush. I like to use this on the front tires instead of nail polish because I find that it dries faster. And then I like to carry a debonder. This is something called uncure, and this is really good for separating two pieces of anything that have been glued together with super glue, like say 2 pieces of skin, or maybe 2 pieces of plastic. Maybe you glued a magnet that you need to remove. This is really good for dissolving the super glue. Something else I like to carry is a tray. This is a tray that I made, but anything that serves as a catch basin will work. The top of a shoebox, part of a carton of something, any type of device that will capture my screws as they fall off my car. Instead of going bouncing across the table and onto the floor, well, I'll never find them again. The idea is that they'll fall right in here. Now this one, I put a separator on it, and I like to put my tools as I'm using them just next to me. So in this regard, I can have the tools that I'm using at that moment sitting right here. When I'm done with that little project, I'll put the tools away, put them back where they belong. That way I can just grab them as they're right here and then put them away when I'm done with them. Now something else I like to carry is a tech block. Now this is really good for helping set up your car. You can tell whether your chassis is flat, whether all 4 wheels are on the ground. This one happens to have a recess, so I can also set the guide height depth. I like to carry a variety of tools in a little plastic box. Scissors, great for cutting braid. I use it for cutting lead wire too, to length. It's really good for cutting lead. I like to use electrician type scissors. They're short and they're heavy duty. So as I say, they cut lead really well. They're kind of like the size that you use in elementary school, but they're much more heavy duty, like I said, for cutting lead. I like to carry some pliers. I'm carrying needle nose right now. I've carried the bull nose. Either is fine. They're really good for squeezing things together, kind of like a vise. Another type of cutting device, tool that I carry is, these are side cutters. And these are they're flush side cutters. So I can get right down to the surface of something and cut it off flush. It's really good for like removing pieces of plastic on a chassis. When you want to put some lead down, I can remove all the plastic that might be in the way and then just lay a nice piece of flat lead there. Another type of cutting tool I carry is an X-Acto knife. It's really good for deburring. It's also good for just shaving off slivers of plastic if you're trying to get some body float. You can use it to strip wires if you need to. It also works well. The point of it's really good for picking up pieces of, say, washers or anything that's really hard to grip with your fingers. Something else that's useful for picking up things that's hard to grip with your fingers are tweezers. I find these really useful for picking out gears, picking up set screws, holding the lead wire to try to get it into a guide flag. Another type of cutting tool I carry is a reamer. This is a 3/32 reamer. This is really useful for enlarging the hole of aluminum wheels that are just a little bit undersized. If you have an axle and the wheel doesn't quite fit onto it, a reamer just removes just enough material that you can get the wheel onto the axle. Something else that's handy to carry is a file. Now, this file used to have a handle on it, but it didn't fit in my box very well, so I just cut the handle off. This is an inexpensive file. Nail files work. Obviously good for sanding. This is good for removing material on the side of a chassis, again, to get some body float. Now, moving on from the cutting tools, I like to talk about gear presses and pullers. This is a type of gear press. It's a pinion press. You use it to press pinion gears onto a motor shaft. And this tool, then, you use it to remove the pinion from a motor shaft. It's convenient to have a tool or a set of tools that will remove the pinion and put a pinion on. Especially when you go to different tracks, you might need a different gear ratio. You can do it by changing your pinion. Now, those two tools will do that, will do what I need it to do, but this is one tool that does the job of both these tools. It removes pinions and it also presses pinions on. So whether you want to carry one or two different types of tools, it's kind of a personal choice. I like to carry tape. Tape's handy for taping the motor pod, and we'll do that because we want to dampen the movement. We still want movement out of the motor pod, but we want to dampen it. We don't want it to move as much. It's also handy when your wing falls off and the rules require that your wing be on the car. I can just take a piece of tape, tape my wing back on the car, waiting for my CA glue to set it up. I like to carry some extra X-Acto blades. Nothing like having a dull blade. It's so much safer to be working with a sharp blade than it is a dull blade. And then I also carry some small pins. And I use these as glue applicators. I can put some glue on a piece of paper, on a piece of wax paper, on a piece of plastic, dip the pin into the glue, and then apply that glue very specifically to a part of the chassis, to wherever it needs to be applied. That's pretty much whatever I carry in my box. I also like to carry, this is just a roll of lint. What do they call that? A lint roller. It's just tape, and that's what I use to clean my tires. I run silicone tires. So I like to carry a roll of that, just make sure that there's some handy beside the track that I'm going to. And now, I've got everything, fits in boxes, fits inside my toolbox, my pit box, and then my pit box I can carry with me wherever I go. And with that, I should have almost everything I need to service my cars, regardless of what track I go to. I hope this was helpful. I enjoyed talking to you. My name's Dave, and I'm from Cloverleaf Racing.